Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build yourself a dark oak fairy house. It is a nice cozy little place, and if we turn on the vibrant visuals, you'll see it's absolutely gorgeous, especially with that lighting and the end rods. Turn it on during the rain, and you'll have something absolutely gorgeous to look at. You can build this decently easy in your playthrough, and you can do it with probably just iron tools if you're so dedicated to do so. Anyways, get yourself a nice flat area in the dark forest. It does not have to be perfectly flat, we can build it right into this little hillside thing. So let's do precisely that. Start by placing down some stone bricks. While I recommend making your own measurements for many things in my tutorials, I recommend 9 by 13 in this case. This being presented is 9 by 14, and I recommend not doing that. So either 9 by 13 or 15. Flatten the inside like this, and then you can lower the whole foundation to be that level. Then our walls, they're pretty simple. We jump up and we place down a whole layer of spruce stripped logs, so let's do precisely that. And then you can see we have pretty much basic shelter. You'll likely find spruce near any dark forest, so keep that in mind. Now, cut out a doorway. This is pretty simple. And the doorway will have to be dark oak in this case. Additionally, when you do it, try to get the doorknob on the right side. It looks much better even if you're left-handed. Now, we can go to one side of the build and carve out a window, and we can start making a small porch. This one is really just some ornamental stuff around the doorway with some stairs. So copy what I'm doing one for one. You can innovate on the design if you want. And you can see how the 14 block wide version of this build is having a little trouble with the front being a bit barren. So keep that in mind. Now we also want to go in and place down some stone brick stairs under the window. This provides a little bit of depth. Then we're going to texture this in a moment, but for now what we want to do is simply add the sides of the roof like this. You can see it's a pretty simple triangle. Copy this exactly. And if you're doing 10 blocks wide, you're going to run into serious issues during this part. I'm just going to tell you that. But it is still very possible. But still, mirror this to both sides. With this roof in place, now we need to actually add some of the framing to it. If we don't have the framing, then you're going to get something kind of wacky. This is non-exact. You can do whatever you want with it. So we just place down some dark oak and try to keep it symmetrical. And you can also try and fit it around your doorway. This changes throughout the build, and I actually scrapped the design shown here. But anyways, what you want to do is place down some moss, but not in the way you think. Instead of just doing straight bands across, what I want to do is provide a little bit of curvature for this. By adding that necessary curvature, it just makes it a bit more professional looking. It's not super complicated, and you can pause to take a closer look at it. Anyways, add some dark oak slabs above this in order to give it some up and down depth, and then we will continue on by building the sides of the roof. Do this only on one side for now. Practice it on the left side of the build. I recommend just not doing super much on the right side because we're going to destroy a lot of it. Anyways, here you can see just hug some moss, and now we're going to make these walls on the very top section go out by 1 block. Copy this shape exactly if you're copying my measurements. Then you make the dark oak go out by 1 and the moss just to make sure it fits in. You're giving it a more unique shape by having it have points at the ends. And then you can add your stairs and slabs to make it fit accordingly. So you can see here, as it gets wider towards the top, it looked better. Then we add some trapdoors to the very bottom of that window. We had the blocks and stairs to even it out. And now what we want to do is go to the front of the build, and of course, make sure there's no gnomes looking at you. But anyways, with the wildlife gotten rid of, we can start adding this little window here. And this is pretty simple. We're going to have a cozy gradient, yellow to white to normal glass. This is a tried and true method. You can do this for pretty much any build in Minecraft actually, so keep it in mind. And you can see if you get rid of the glass, it looks a bit better by just having all of them be colored. Then we can try some experimental stuff. On the bottom, I replaced the stone bricks with a lot of tough andesite and polished andesite. on the front of the build in an attempt to make it more varied before I ended up just shrinking it down to 13, I tried a bunch of signs on it. This may be expensive and cause lag, so I got rid of it. To make it a bit more varied, I added some sideways logs just to mess it up, and then some dark oak on the very corners. From here, what you want to do is add some dark oak leaves along the sides of the build, just experiment with some stuff. Bushes like these. I recommend using the dark oak leaves just because they're cheaper and they'll match nearby stuff, but you might want to try normal oak just to see how it looks. I did not experiment with it in this video. Additionally, on this side of the build, where we are going to destroy it to put a tower, let's just chop it right in half, like this. This makes sure we don't add anything cool onto it, because it will get promptly deleted. So now, with all that, let's add some decorations to the front of the build, all around, just to make sure it looks complete. And right here, that worked splendid. This is just a collection of all the little things. End rod, mushroom block to get big mushroom. Do the same thing with a pressure plate to get big brown mushroom. And then some flowers surrounding it. On the front, some spore blossoms and resin on the bushes. Additionally, I added a chimney, but I'll cover that in a moment. The spore blossoms just add a ton to the build because, well, yeah, they're just particles. We also have some green concrete and terracotta surrounding the base of the build, and some leaf litter on top of that to make sure it doesn't look player placed. Also, we have a path made of tuff and cobblestone. And how all that ties together, well, you can connect it with your other builds in the area. You might want to also add street lamps beside it. Swapping to vibrant visuals for a moment, right here we can see the side of the build, just kind of forgot to cover it, so you get a much prettier version of it. So include a bunch of lanterns. The bushes here, you can put signs in front of them and use shelves to make the side of your windows. Stairs and trapdoors are greatly appreciated. Fence gates on the sides to substitute for stairs to make more varied stuff. And then we can add some dark oak as a little bit of an awning. Anyways, back to normal. We can add some random flower patches about, those mushrooms all about, especially as herboulettes. They work very well. And we can also add some rocks. They're just some blobs with some leaves, moss carpets, flowers, whatnot, made of stone slabs. And if you incorporate them correctly into the build, then they make it feel a lot more whimsical. So be sure to do that. And if there's anything that you want to also see included, you could comment down below. It helps all of us. Anyways, let's add a chimney. Just a blob of walls made of cobblestone, tuff, and cobbled deep slate. And you can see how that adds a bit more to it. Then we have a blob of black surrounded in gray, and then light gray, a 2x2, and then a 1 block. This gives it a nice smoky effect. Just place them haphazardly and refine it as needed using Silk Touch. Then put a fire inside and make sure it doesn't burn the build from the outside. It repeatedly kept burning the dark oak thing, so I ended up having to add a boulder pile off camera to it. Anyways, let's go here and we can see the side of the build that's going to have the tower. Let's just work on that real quick. This is pretty simple. We're going to make a 3x3 circle centered on either of these 2 blocks. Which one is up to you. But anyways, I'm going to put it on the outer block, and you can see we're just going to place some tuff. This is a placeholder. We're going to make it out of a gradient later. Then use some stone, because that's going to be a good block to get an idea of what it will look like, and get it to an appropriate height. It is up to you, and it really depends on your terrain and your roof height, which depends on a whole bunch of other things. But anyways, build your tower up like this, and figure out where you want to place the top of it. Now, with the tower to its desired height, preferably if you insert some windows, we connect it to the side. You can see the dark oak is pretty simple. You can kind of just eyeball it for that one. Place down your windows. And this is a good way to determine where you actually want it to be. I made my windows 1 block above the roof block, so that way it is dark oak, then stone, then window. Then we will insert a gradient, going from green to tuff to stone to cobblestone to smooth stone, all the way up to direct. You can modify this if you want, but I think this works very well. So let's put it up in the top left, and we can see how this works. Let's just insert the gradient right in. Make sure to dither it a little, and look at what we get. And now, this works absolutely splendid. we go from the bottom to top. We also hollow out the central zone and put some green concrete at the bottom to provide a little bit of growth to it. Notice how the layers are not perfectly smooth, and then we go up to the top where it's all diorite. This white contrasts with the greens of the dark forest, so I recommend working with that. Diorite is a fantastic block, don't let this guy lie to you. It works very well in birch forest and dark forest, so keep that in mind. Now, get rid of your gradient, and we need to do the same thing we did on the sides of the roof down below, except for the tower. And you can see how that works. Very simplistic idea. We just do a little bit of arching with some stairs. Then, we make a gradient. Go up to the top, and with some purple concrete, make your standard wizard tower shape. Something like this, you can copy my exact blocks. And then, we will gradient that as well in just a second. So you can see, works just fine, and it makes it a bit more whimsical. Of course, I'm not the kind to build cute builds, but I think this is pretty close to that. And then we can even incorporate some magenta into it. You can do a spiral, and you can end it with an end rod. Alternatively, you can just do a bottom-up gradient like I did. And you can see how this gives the illusion of it being slightly taller, even though it's kind of stout. I also add a wall onto the top to make it appear slightly taller. So now, with all of that in place, let's just add the wall and you can see the before and after shot. You can see how it's a nice tall tower, which really contrasts with the rest of the house. We safely combine two builds in a reasonable manner. And with all that connecting, well, we can go to midnight and we can see the build is decently lit up. This is because I hid a shroom light at the top with some stairs and full blocks. Hide some lanterns across the build, especially on the roof. You could definitely hide a lot of lighting on that using moss carpets. But anyways, we have that in place, we just need to make sure it's well lit. So go in, and we can decorate the roof so that way we can add the lighting. Hilariously, despite all this talk, I actually never add the lighting. But still, bone meal it, and you can see this is already a pretty good start by adding, well, just roof stuff. Then, add some big arcing dark oak leaf clusters, and remove some of the azalea bushes. Replace all azalea bushes with their flowering variant as well. Doing this gives it a bit of overgrowth, and we can extend this onto the tower as well, so that way it's not so bland. Because the sides of it, yeah, they're gradiented but have nothing going on. So be sure to do that. So that way it doesn't look like two builds I put together, but two builds that were built together. Very important distinction. And then with all that, let's incorporate a little bit of magenta terracotta, and you can see how that works by adding some flowers into it. So now, once we add those lanterns to the bottom, because I eventually do that, then we will be all done with the majority of this build. We can go in here and also incorporate some polished blocks into the gradient to break it up a little. So now, we can finally work on the interior, and we're already almost done with the video. This is because the interior is admittedly not much. We just add some pale to the bottom. From here, you can continue making sure the floor is interesting by incorporating some stripped logs and buttons into it. This is pretty easy. You just do it like this. Make sure they all go one direction, either with or against the grain of the planks, and then the buttons. Remove them as needed. Then, for our ceiling, this is also pretty easy. You just have to make sure none of it is visible from the outside. You just do layers like this, and then you insert your logs, making sure you don't expose anything, and insert stairs to hide any moss. So something like this. And then we put the stairs right across, and what do you know? You end up with something pretty nice. So let's repeat this all the way through, and you can see that works very well. You can also have the chimneys and the tower bleed into this to make it a bit more interesting. And then you can also incorporate extra lighting. Like on the top here, it's a little bit dark. So I want to include more lighting because this isn't a build that wants to play with darkness. So all around here, we have the lights incorporated, that little boulder pile I added off camera, and then some trapdoors around the windows. And now we're just going to continue decorating this interior place. And this is not super complicated. Get out all of your stuff you need in survival mode, just like that, and then start placing them about. This is not super complicated. Additionally, while we have the building going on in the top left, let's just place down some ladders. And this goes all the way up. And we can also do a spiral staircase instead. This will reduce the amount of room you actually have to work with, so keep that in mind. But anyways, let's just look at what I'm gonna do in the top right. And you can just see, place down a bunch of things. As long as you have things filling stuff up, then you'll have something to look at. So be sure to not leave your walls undone. So we do this, incorporating random pieces of whatever, and now we have a completed build. So let's take a look inside. You can see here a whole bunch of stuff: jukeboxes, carpets, chests, looms, barrels, and we have a barrel with a tripwire on the shelf. We even have a hidden second floor, chests. You can pause and just note anything you thought was particularly interesting. And we have the hidden enchantment setup up here, just to make sure it's all available, and a chest for holding lapis. So now, with all of that, we can go into our tower. And also, we have a hidden mine there. Incomplete, but if you want to have a themed mine, then you can always request it in the comments. Then, at the top, we have the bedroom. This makes sure it's tall enough to avoid having mobs being like, "You cannot rest now." And with that out of the way, we have the build. So let's look at it in vibrant visuals yet again in just a moment. And you can see, very cozy. You can build several of these and build themed builds all around it just to really add to your biome. You can see, looks very good during the day. All other nearby structures have been removed. And yeah, there's not super much to say about it. It's simply just a really good build. So if you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I really wanted to up the watchability of this video compared to the other ones, including a bit more footage and some other various hints here and there. So if there's anything you'd like to see me change about the videos, please comment down below. I can really help. Of course, I do less instructions and more idea-based building, but still, if there's something like, hey, I'd like text here, or a new segment of the video, I can always see if I can incorporate that. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.